The world has agreed to accelerate the transition to a green economy that requires innovative solutions. Canada is a true example of how embracing and leveraging the power of digitalization can work well with the process of transforming of our economy. We are deeply honored to welcome His Excellency Mr. Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, to provide his keynote address in front of us.
Hello everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you all for being here. Because it's through conversations like today's that we can better understand what the business community needs to grow the economy and create good jobs for the middle class and people working hard to join it. It's great that the B20 is here in Indonesia this year. Indonesia's rapid growth presents enormous opportunities for investors and businesses. I just arrived from Cambodia, where we announced that we are elevating Canada's relationship with ASEAN to a strategic partnership. This is a strong demonstration of our engagement in the region, and it's part of our plan to expand our economic ties in a big way. Last week, we announced Canada's upcoming Indo-Pacific strategy. L'Indo-Pacifique est la région économique qui connaît la croissance la plus rapide dans le monde. C'est une plaque tournante de plus en plus importante pour le commerce et pour créer de bons emplois aujourd'hui et pour l'avenir. We're deepening our existing friendships in the region, seeking new allies, and promoting stability. And we know that business leaders like you are key to our individual and collective success. We also know that global businesses and commerce need the predictability and reliability that the international rules-based order establishes. This is something that Canada will always stand up for. Canada's message is clear. We have the values that make us a solid, reliable partner. We have the raw materials and trade access, and we have a skilled, educated, ambitious, and diverse workforce like no other. We're making major investments in the Indo-Pacific that will strengthen our engagement here in the long term. For example, we're investing in a new Canadian trade gateway in Southeast Asia that will help Canadian businesses expand into new markets, linking them to business networks in this dynamic region. Canada and the Indo-Pacific region also share strong ties between our people, and we'll make these ties even stronger. Today, we're announcing an agreement between Canada and India that will allow an unlimited number of flights between our two countries. By making the movement of goods and people faster and easier, we'll facilitate trade and investment between Canada and India and help our businesses grow and succeed. Tous les enjeux qui comptent pour le monde et pour les Canadiens, que ce soit la sécurité, la prospérité, les droits de la personne, la santé publique ou les changements climatiques, ces enjeux vont être influencés par les relations que le Canada et nos partenaires entretiennent avec les pays de la région Indo-Pacifique. Je suis donc heureux d'être en Indonésie aujourd'hui pour poursuivre ce travail. As you all know, the world is changing fast. And over the past couple of years, we've been facing enormous challenges that are further accelerating this change. During the pandemic, we all had to adjust. Kids and teachers moved their classes online, small businesses shifted to e-commerce, and everyone adapted as best they could. After a virtual G20 in 2020, being able to gather in Rome in person last year gave us hope that things were finally getting back to normal. But of course, that's not exactly what happened, did it? Russia's brutal war in Ukraine is creating food and energy crises. It's disrupting supply chains and raising the cost of living. Families are worried that they're not going to be able to put food on the table or won't be able to heat their homes during winter. These challenges are real, and only through collaboration between business and governments and civil society can we create real, lasting solutions. And technology, if used right, is definitely a tool that will help us build a better future for everyone. But whenever we talk about Industry 4.0 and the prosperity that it can unlock, we have to remember to always put people at the center of everything we do. Technology keeps getting better, and that's great. But at the same time, technology needs to make people's lives better, too. La pandémie a démontré à quel point les technologies jouent un rôle incontournable dans nos vies. Plus que jamais, il faut saisir les occasions que nous offre l'économie numérique si on veut bâtir un avenir plus prospère. Emerging technologies are radically transforming businesses and business models and unleashing new market opportunities. High-tech, quantum, and AI are Canadian strengths. Canada is not only the most educated country in the OECD, but our strong, world-leading immigration policies are attracting highly skilled talent in competitive industries. In fact, Toronto and Vancouver have seen the highest high-tech job growth in North America over the past 2 years. New technologies can make global economies and international trade more accessible for people everywhere. But we have to make sure that the benefits don't just accrue to the wealthiest. On doit s'assurer que les plus petites entreprises et économies peuvent accéder pleinement au marché mondial. We have to make sure that smaller businesses and economies can fully access the global marketplace. If we want to level the playing field, we must cooperate through the sharing of information and best practices. We must identify and develop common standards. For example, Canada is leading on the responsible development and use of artificial intelligence. We're also undertaking major legislative reforms that will strengthen privacy protections for Canadians, including specific provisions to protect children. See, while always ensuring and defending free speech, we must make it clear that it cannot be okay to bully and attack people online. Governments, and especially big technology companies, need to safeguard people's data and privacy and address online harassment and violence to ensure trust in technology. At home, we're focused on creating good, sustainable middle-class jobs now and into the future. Canada has some of the best, most talented workers in the world. These are the people with the skills and expertise to power our shared net zero future. I think of the innovators who are launching clean hydrogen projects everywhere from Newfoundland to Alberta. These are the people who will produce the clean energy that Canada will ship to German markets as Europe accelerates its transition to renewables away from Russian oil and gas. I think of our auto workers who are building electric vehicles in Ontario with batteries built in Quebec from nickel and lithium mined in northern Canada. And the steel and the aluminum they're using, also made in Canada, is the cleanest in the world because Canada's electricity grid is already over 80% clean and on our way to 100. And that matters, not just in the fight against climate change, but it matters because increasingly clients and customers are asking to know the impact of their products, of what they're sourcing. It is an imperative, it is a business advantage to be going cleaner and greener. And that's what Canada and so many of you here fully understand. Pour bâtir un avenir carboneutre, nos travailleurs canadiens sont au cœur de notre réussite. Later this year, we'll be releasing our Sustainable Jobs Plan, a roadmap for our own just transition, or in plainer language, our plan to make sure workers have the skills they need to succeed in the economy of today and tomorrow. This builds on years of work our government has been doing to ensure that workers and citizens see that being open to the world can be good for them, not just good for the economy. That's how Canada has been able to avoid the protectionism rising around the world these past few years and sign a record number of trade deals. And that's how Canada remains the only G7 country with a free trade deal with every other G7 country. In Canada, and this is also true here in the Indo-Pacific and around the world, there is a growing demand for circular economy initiatives. Companies view net zero as foundational. This presents an opportunity not only for business development, exports, and partnerships, but for capacity building. Global investors have always thought about Canada for our resources, but you should also think about Canada for our resourcefulness. That's our true competitive advantage. Canada is rapidly becoming the energy and tech supplier a net zero world will need because Canadians have the skills a net zero world will demand. The world is changing fast, but Canada's core values like peace, democracy, stability, respect for human rights are here to stay. In the face of many challenges, like the rising cost of living caused by global inflation, we must continue to put people and workers first. Business leaders like you all know full well that social infrastructure is just as important as building good roads or bridges. In Canada, we're investing in programs like $10 a day childcare to make sure that parents, and especially mothers, don't have to choose between their family and their career. We've made increases to the federal minimum wage. We've made income benefits more generous for low-income workers. Les mesures prises par notre gouvernement ont permis à notre pays de réduire les inégalités de manière historique. Smart business leaders understand that you need to invest in workers and people for you to remain competitive. How you support, empower, retain, and grow your workforce is central to success these days. Well, that's how governments need to think and operate too. When we support the middle class, when we put people at the center of our policies, we create the conditions for growth and the consensus to make real change on issues that matter to everyone, like tackling climate change. And that's what you can always count on from Canada, as together we build a more prosperous world for everyone. Merci beaucoup, mes amis.
Thank you, Prime Minister Trudeau, for the inspiration and inspirational thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated as we're still waiting for the President of the Republic of Indonesia and the Prime Minister of Australia. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated as we're still waiting for the Presidents of the Republic of Indonesia and the Prime Minister of Australia. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to have your cooperation, please. Please be seated as we are still waiting for the arrival of the President of the Republic of Indonesia, as well as the Prime Minister of Australia, who will come in a few moments. We would like to have your cooperation, please be seated as the President of the Republic of Indonesia and the Prime Minister of Australia are coming on their way. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to have your cooperation. Please be seated as we are still waiting for the Presidents of the Republic of Indonesia and the Prime Minister of Australia. Once again, we would like to have you please be seated as we are still waiting for the Presidents of the Republic of Indonesia and the Prime Minister of Australia. Bapak Ibu, kami juga memohon kerjasamanya untuk mohon duduk dikarenakan Presiden Republik Indonesia dan Perdana Menteri Australia akan segera tiba. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to have your cooperation to please be seated as the Presidents of the Republic of Indonesia and the Prime Minister of Australia are coming and will be speaking in front of us. To all organizing committee, would you please help us in making sure that all the audiences are seated? To all the organizing committee, would like to have your help in making sure that all the audiences are seated. Thank you. Sekali lagi Bapak Ibu, kami mohon kerjasamanya untuk mohon duduk dikarenakan Bapak Presiden dan juga Perdana Menteri Australia akan segera hadir. Ladies and gentlemen, once again please, we'd like to have your cooperation. Please be seated as the Presidents of the Republic of Indonesia and Prime Minister of Australia are coming their way. Kepada teman-teman kameramen, kami persilakan untuk kembali ke posisi teman-teman. Teman-teman kameramen yang berada di panggung kecil, kami mohon kerjasamanya untuk kembali ke posisi di belakang. Mohon kerjasamanya ya. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the arrival of the President of the Republic of Indonesia, His Excellency Mr. Joko Widodo, and Prime Minister of Australia, His Excellency Mr. Anthony Albanese. Please be seated. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, now we will be listening to a keynote address on B20 joint recommendations towards stronger global recovery by the chair of B20 Indonesia, Ms. Sinta Kamdani.
His Excellency President Joko Widodo, the chair of also G20 Indonesia. His Excellency Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister of Australia. His Excellency Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada. Esteemed world leaders, business colleagues, and distinguished guests, I salute you all and I thank you for making this possible. I would like to express our immense gratitude to everyone for making the B20 a success. Today, I think back to when our President called on the B20 to collaborate with the G20 to contribute to global economic recovery. I feel privileged to say that together as the B20, we have made recommendations to the G20 which will drive this forward. That is the legacy of B20 Indonesia. Throughout our mandate, we have remained committed to giving businesses a platform for dialogue and supporting G20 governments. Let's look back to where we were in 2020, the great lockdown. Before the pandemic, we thought we knew what challenges we would face, but we didn't see the pandemic coming. No one did. In 2021, we entered a new chapter, the Great Reboot. There was a clear shift from managing the crisis to planning how to emerge from it. Businesses started to innovate to harness new opportunity. We took over the B20 presidency during the time of crisis. Today, we are moving into a new chapter, the Great Rebound. We faced many challenges during our presidency, but now we have an opportunity for a new economic era based on cooperation. It is in that spirit that I'm proud to share with you today the B20 Indonesia Communique, which includes our joint recommendation for G20 leaders. First, we are focusing on innovation to unlock post-crisis growth. This includes opening up digital opportunities across the economy, expanding cooperation for better cybercrime responses, and increasing funds for green infrastructure through innovative financing mechanisms, which accelerate the energy transition. Second, we are pushing for accelerated digital transformation. B20 Indonesia is turbocharging the empowerment of MSME and vulnerable groups by focusing on capability, entrepreneurship, job creation, and the empowerment of women-led MSME. We envision an uplift for workers in the informal economy, included in rural communities. And lastly, to realize a more equitable healthcare architecture, we are bolstering collaboration between developed and developing countries, particularly as we continue to fight to mitigate future global crises by creating guidelines on health emergency preparedness. This year, B20 was incredibly diverse, with 6 task forces and 1 Action Council member from more than 15 industries across G20 countries. Together, we have reached consensus. I would highlight, we have reached consensus with 25 policy recommendations and 68 policy action. Yes, action, not just recommendations. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, this is just the beginning. It is where we go from here that matters. Beyond policy recommendation, we need to have real impact. We need to set ourselves up for the great rebound. In the spirit of our continued commitment beyond our presidency, B20 Indonesia has created 4 legacy programs. These are inspired by our most pressing priorities: green transition, inclusive growth, and equitable healthcare. Mr. President, you will meet with the G20 leaders tomorrow and I hope you can advance these priorities to the G20 as a joint vision between government and businesses to achieve collaborative, sustainable, and inclusive growth. Once again, thank you, Mr. President, for your stewardship in this challenging time. You have led many examples and have shown the true spirit of collaboration, inspiring us to develop more innovative ideas and more partnership to jointly drive stronger global recovery. To my chairman, Mr. Arshad Rashid, and the whole KADIN committee, all the task forces, Action Council, knowledge partner, network partner, and sponsor, thank you for all your hard work. It has been an honor to chair the B20 this year. We have come a long way. We have come a long way for a great rebound. And may we now work together and push the button to go forward and give and pass to India for a better together business and government for collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ibu Sinta. Ladies and gentlemen, moving forward to our next remarks, it is my pleasure to call upon the Chairman of Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or KADIN Indonesia, host of B20 Indonesia, to deliver his remarks, B20 Presidency 2022, Indonesia's leadership in advancing global priorities. To Mr. Arshad Rashid, the stage is yours.
His Excellency Bapak Joko Widodo, the President of the Republic of Indonesia, His Excellency Mr. Anthony Albanese, Prime Minister of Australia, His Excellency and all honorable state leaders and distinguished guests. It is a great honor for me as the host of the B20 Indonesia to address you at this historic occasion. This is the first time that B20 and G20 summit has been held on Indonesian soil. It is also the first in-person summit since the pandemic. Coming on the heels of the world's emergence from a global pandemic, the Indonesian G20 presidency is timely. This year's G20 presidency takes place against the backdrop of intensified geopolitical polarization, as well as concerns that globalization has failed to affect equitable gain. In my view, Indonesia is uniquely qualified to understand such concern. Our equatorial country, which is literally situated between the global north and south, is a country of contrast. As the only ASEAN country that is permanent member of the G20, Indonesia is able to advocate for both developed and developing economy on the global stage. At the same time, Indonesia has a long tradition of advocating for different voices at the table. Just imagine, on one hand, we are a major global commodities producers. On the other hand, more than 95% of jobs are created by micro, small, and medium enterprises. And while Indonesia is the fastest growing digital economy in Southeast Asia, it is also home to 100 million unbanked people. On top of that, we are a diverse, multi-faith country with more than 17,000 islands. So, the question, how do we bridge our differences and drive consensus? I'll be honest, it hasn't always been easy. But two fundamental Indonesian values that have enabled us to bridge these differences and forge ahead are gotong royong, meaning the spirit of mutual inclusive collaboration to achieve a collective good, and Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, a commitment to achieve unity in diversity. These two concepts have enabled Indonesia to maintain stability and improve prosperity over the last 20 years. We have tried to bring this sense of unity and collaborative action to this year's B20 proceeding. And with this year's, with the support of everyone involved, I do believe we have succeeded. Following the directive of His Excellency, President Joko Widodo, we established three major priorities for this year's B20 summit in line with G20 priorities that reflects issues of concern to both emerging markets and developed countries. These are the green economy, the empowerment of MSME and women, and the strengthening of global healthcare resilience. These three elements are key to ensuring collective, sustainable, and inclusive growth for all countries. In particular, I would like to highlight this the first time that MSME has been highlighted as a major B20 topic despite the major role that small businesses play all over the world. With regard to the green economy, B20 Indonesia has already begun to take concrete actions. Within Indonesia, we are actively driving the green transition through various pathways, including industrial decarbonization and facilitating green investment. A carbon center of excellence has been established in the hopes of accelerating global collaboration on net zero initiative. We have also established the first net zero hub in Indonesia to drive and facilitate the private sector's commitment to net zero. The second priority is to promote inclusive growth by empowering MSME and women. To this end, we have established the One Global Women Empowerment Initiative, which aims to facilitate the inclusion of women in the global economy through training, support, guidance, funding, and more. This initiative will be hosted by the International Organization of Employers, which will act as a bridge between successive G20 and B20 presidencies. We have also set in motion a number of MSME initiatives, including a platform that facilitates Indonesian MSMEs to participate in the complex supply chains. Given that MSME account for 60% of Indonesia GDP, this is expected to unlock substantial growth, and we hope that these programs can be replicated elsewhere. The third priority is to create an equitable global healthcare system. B20 Indonesia has mounted the Global One-Shot campaign, a campaign that aims to bring together government, industry, and global health organizations for the purpose of creating a permanent worldwide vaccination programs. This will help decrease vaccine inequality between the global south and the global north, and help close gaps in health infrastructures across population and region worldwide. As part of increasing healthcare resilience in Indonesia, we also have helped facilitate local manufacturing capabilities for vaccine, strengthening Indonesian pandemic preparedness and response capabilities. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, before I end my remarks, I would like to re-emphasize the inclusive development framework I have introduced yesterday. The 5 Ps: peace, prosperity, people, planet, and partnership. As we are past the baton to India, this framework will remain relevant in advancing global priorities and generating impact beyond G20 countries. In closing, I would like to thank you once again for the chance to report on B20 Indonesia's efforts, and I would like to express my heartiest thanks to all those who have participated in the B20 process throughout the year. Gotong Royong and Bhinneka Tunggal Ika have made this year's B20 summit a success. And looking ahead, we offer our utmost support to India for next year's summit. Also, we'd like to thank you. Together is a partnership between me and Sinta and everyone at Kadin and all the stakeholders of Indonesia and also the participants of the B20. We, the B20 Indonesia, stands with the G20 to advance innovative, inclusive, and collaborative growth. Let's recover together. Let's recover stronger. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arshad. Ladies and gentlemen, to continue with our session, please allow me to present a video on the B20 market achievements and highlights of our proceedings and commitments.
The G20 economies account for 75% of global trade and 80% of the world's GDP. The Business 20, or the B20, is the business arm of the G20, mandated to cultivate private sector-led transformation to enable the G20 economies to recover together and recover stronger. Together, the B20 Indonesia's Task Forces and Action Council convened a diverse group of business leaders to deliver tangible and comprehensive policy recommendations and B20 communique, providing concrete outcomes and shaping the policy recommendations to enable businesses globally. The B20 Indonesia is also committed to drive 3 key movements that will recourse global trajectory for the better. These are green transition, inclusive growth, and equitable healthcare. It is the decade for the G20 countries to drive green transition, as we account for almost half of the world's share of natural-based solutions. The B20 Indonesia advocates companies to accelerate green transition towards net zero emission target and equip stakeholders with the necessary knowledge to benefit from carbon market. To embody the spirit of Gotong Royong and capture the huge upside of inclusive growth, the B20 Indonesia pushes for next-generation mid-sized companies to be part of the global supply chain and builds necessary infrastructure to promote the impactful inclusion of women in the global economy. Finally, to prepare for future health crises, the B20 Indonesia urges the need for equitable healthcare to bolster health system resilience. This journey has shown how collaboration and spirit to innovate can drive change. Through commitments and programs that we have built together, let's continue to realize an innovative, inclusive, and collaborative growth for all.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, our next agenda will be the speech by the G20 leader with the main theme of building a strong and resilient economic recovery strategy of all. Please welcome the Prime Minister of Australia, His Excellency, Mr. Anthony Albanese.
Good evening, everyone. Salamat sore. I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you in Bali, and I particularly want to acknowledge my friend, President Widodo. It is great to be back in Indonesia and to congratulate President Widodo and his team for hosting what will be a very successful G20 meeting following what has been a successful hosting of the B20 here today. I do want to thank the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Kadin, including its chairperson and host of the B20, Pak Assad, and chair of the B20, Ibu Shinta, for bringing us together, and I thank you for your addresses here this evening. President Widodo has once again shown us enormously kind hospitality. This is my 7th official visit to Indonesia and my 2nd as Prime Minister. And the new government that I lead is determined to write a new chapter in Australia and Indonesia's long history of friendship and cooperation. I was reminded of that long history during my first visit here as Prime Minister, when I visited not just Jakarta, but also Makassar. Centuries ago, the sea route between Makassar and the top end of Australia was a flourishing trade corridor. Each December, the Yolngu people of Arnhem Land would look to the sea, waiting for the horizon to fill with the sails of Macassan vessels. The Yolngu immortalised those boats in their art, and you can find them painted on sandstone and bark, their sails forever full with the wind that brought them across the sea. The relationship between the Macassan seafarers and First Nations people of Australia was built around trade, but it was also built around mutual respect. It was a relationship of equals that set the template for the people-to-people contact that has always been at the very heart of Australia's relationship with the people of Indonesia. So much has changed since that era, but what has remained, and indeed thrived, is our mutual respect. Knowing this history gives us perspective, and it also reminds us that relationships between nations are always bigger and broader and deeper and richer than just leader-to-leader conversations, as vital as they are. That's why when I came to Indonesia in June, I was joined by a large delegation of government ministers and senior business leaders, the head of the Business Council of Australia, who's with us again this evening, the CEO of the Commonwealth Bank, and representatives of major companies such as Wesfarmers, Fortescue, BlueScope, Sun Cable and Thales. And I'm delighted that so many Australian business leaders are joining me here again today. Australian businesses are energised by the tremendous opportunities that this nation and this region hold. This B20 gathering, bringing together influential business leaders from around the world, draws on that same spirit, recognising that innovative, inclusive and collaborative growth won't be built and sustained by the actions of government alone. It will depend on the insights and enterprise and cooperation and investment of businesses and financial institutions and civil society and workers' representatives as well. So I welcome the B20's insights on the way forward, and I thank you for the care and effort that you have put into crafting your recommendations. And I embrace the goal that you have set: innovative growth, because the challenges we face are different to previous economic downturns, and the policy response must be different too. Inclusive growth, because the quality of our response and the measure of our recovery must hold no one back and leave no one behind. And collaborative growth, because in a globalised economy, it is not just markets and products and technologies that we hold in common, it is challenges but also opportunities as well. Right now, we face a collective economic challenge new to the G20, indeed new to our generation. It was the global financial crisis and the seismic upheaval in the banking system which first elevated the G20 to a leader-level meeting. Leaders gathered in Washington in 2008 to unfreeze global credit markets and shore up the capital positions of financial institutions. And they came to London in 2009 to craft a global economic stimulus package. As Infrastructure Minister, I had the privilege of being part of the Australian delegation at that meeting. The financial crisis we faced then produced a global demand shock. The economic challenge that we face now is primarily a global supply shock. The long tail of the pandemic is constricting supply chains and stretching workforces. And Russia's invasion of Ukraine is inflicting severe, ongoing disruption to food, fuel and energy markets. Inflation is biting advanced economies around the world, and central banks are responding with the sharpest and most synchronised tightening of monetary policy that we have seen in decades. For governments to see off the threat of inflation, to prevent runaway inflation from eroding national prosperity and devaluing people's wages, we must ensure fiscal policy is working in concert with monetary policy, not contradicting it. And macroeconomic policy coordination, along with cross-border collaboration between businesses such as those in this room, has an important part to play in that. I will always remember the sense of purpose and urgency with which world leaders in London worked to coordinate that $1 trillion global stimulus package, while at the same time laying down a shared commitment to free market principles, to the rule of law, to open trade and investment, to competitive markets and to effectively regulated financial systems. Knowing that these are essential to building stronger and more inclusive prosperity for all. Even then, in the heart of the storm, there was still a focus on the horizon. Put simply, the G20 was made for moments like these and built for these challenges, founded on the unifying principle of multilateralism, that we can achieve far more together than we ever will alone. So yes, we can recover together and we can recover stronger. Indeed, recovering stronger depends on recovering together. We do this by ensuring that our tax systems reward people for their hard work and repay the initiative and enterprise of our businesses and job creators, by building the resilience and diversity of supply chains so we are better prepared for global shocks, and by helping developing countries to manage rising debt sustainably, risk by implementing measures such as the G20 Common Framework for Debt Treatment, and achieving the innovative and inclusive and collaborative growth that the B20 have challenged us to seek also means investing in the skills and productivity of our workforce and increasing participation opportunities, as well as unlocking the potential of people who have historically been locked out of career opportunities because of gender, race, disadvantage or disability. And of course, collaboration means strengthening our trade links, not just in the exchange of raw materials or finished products, but in the sharing of research and technology and education and expertise. Governments can help by breaking down tariff walls and building trade bridges. We can upgrade infrastructure, our ports and freight terminals, our energy pipelines and transmission technology to